just really how much depth and context needs to be brought to bear to these questions, and how much of this information is not necessarily being covered when people talk about this. And so if we're thinking about looking ahead to 2017, the kind of work that collectively needs to be done to make sure that the richness of the historical context is appreciated. And I really want to thank the panelists for starting that process and bringing to bear a rich range of perspectives that need to be heard. I'm going to let people sort of have a quick response, but I want to sort of change the frame just a little bit. We've also heard a lot about the role that important institutions and movements have played within this discussion. So there's discussion about the role of black churches in different contexts, the role of the Jewish community and the synagogues, and the important relationship between the Jewish community and the black community in the context of civil rights. We haven't talked expressly about unions, but we've talked about labor and jobs and the importance of that, and that's certainly part of the story here. We've talked about the civil rights institutions, talking about the black power institutions, and you put the sort of generally in this context of thinking about political and social movements. Okay? So if we kind of reflect about the energy and the movements that were relevant then, the players who are relevant then, and we're kind of thinking what happened after the riots and kind of leading into a discussion that pivots into what's happening today, any reflections people have, I'm going to keep this brief, just about the role of institutions, particular institutions, changes in institutions, as 1967 passes and the 70s, 80s, 90s come and lead us to the present moment.
I think after 67, you know, then you see the black intelligentsia rise up. You know, you do have a great migration, has been indicated, of white folks leaving the city. And at that time, you know, you have then the first election of black mayor, which is Coleman Alexander Young. And that was a dramatic change in economic opportunity for black folks in the city at that time. It also changed the police department. I mean, one thing that was happening was stress. What was it? Stop street crime.
Stop the robberies and enjoy safe
streets. Was stress. So I mean, he ran on the fact that we're going to eliminate stress, and stress was eliminated. And then you had a balancing out of economic opportunities in the city. You started to see a police department that was more reflective of the people that lived in the city. You started to see people working for the city that were more reflective of the people that were remaining in the city. So it was a time of great opportunity. It was the rise of what was known as the Shrines of the Black Madonna, which I was a major part of my development under Jamon Jamon. And you talked about the late 69, 70s and on, you had the strong black church, which was instrumental in the black community. And much of that has changed today. You know, and I often wondered, you know, after the Million Man March in 1995, whether there was a concerted effort to make sure that you didn't have black males coming back to those communities and being able to really develop those communities. I think at that time what you began to see was the faith-based initiatives. You saw many black churches co-opted, and these were institutions that were the foundation of much of the movement that went on within the black community, and those institutions were co-opted. So it was a time of growth and development and the development of a black middle class, which ultimately later on led to a change in politics.
Oh, irony. It's interesting to note that in April 4th of 1967, a mere 16 weeks before the start of the rebellion here, Martin Luther King made one of the great speeches of his life where he connected the racism in the United States and militarism around the world. It was a very brave speech to make. He had worked well with Lyndon Johnson on the Voting Rights Act, but as soon as he made that speech and called the United States the greatest purveyor of military action around the world, his words, of course, were much better than what I'm saying, but that's the idea. It was the speech, at least one of the speeches, in which he mentioned the three great evils in American society of materialism, militarism, and racism, and how that came to play out in the city of Detroit 16 weeks exactly, I think, later. It's just something to think about. Wow.
Real quick, I want to again piggyback off of Cecily, the Black church being one of the institutions, because it's come up a number of times in my presentation. So I do want to talk about that, just how that was a foundation for so much stuff. So in the 1833 rebellion that I talked about earlier, a church forms out of that. You know, the Second Baptist Church forms out of that, being the first black church in Detroit, and the second being Bethel AME, which is really a stone, not a little more than a stone's throw from where we are right now, on Warren and St., as my grandmother would say, St. Antoine. So Warren and St. Antoine, St. Antoine. You see the Bethel AME Church, which was the second church in Detroit, and the third was St. Matthew's, which no longer exists. It is now merged with St. Joseph's, which is on Woodward in Holbrook. Yes, thank you, Woodward and Holbrook. So you had those three churches. They're kind of the foundation of black organization in the early 1800s throughout to the mid 1900s. But then other churches would again join this group. So, you know, you had groups, you had, I already said, New Bethel, you had the King Solomon Baptist Church, you had Second Ebenezer, AME, and I'm trying to think of the one on 7 Mile. 7 Mile in the Lodge, Charles Adams. Hartford, thank you, Hartford Memorial Baptist Church. So you have these churches that are, like she said, the strong black church. We have these strong black churches. And Cecily said they co-opted today, many of them. And I no doubt that's part of it. But then another thing that's happened is people saw the reality of ministers, preachers saw what happened to Martin Luther King Jr., what happened to Malcolm X, what happened to Fred Shuttlesworth and Ralph Abernathy. Either they were straight up murdered like Malcolm and Martin were, or they died almost pitiful deaths. They died poor. Malcolm's children and family, many people had to donate to take care of them, including people here like Marlene Ed Vaughn and Dan Aldridge did fundraisers to take care of Malcolm's children and Becky. For Martin, his children went to school because Harry Belafonte paid for them to go to school, because he left no money, because he put all of the money he raised, including the money he got from the Nobel Peace Prize, right back into the movement, because it wasn't about riches for them. So a new minister class saw what happened to them. They did all that. They had sacrificed all that for the community, and they broke. They died broke. Well, I'm going to come with a different message. And the new message is individual prosperity. And so churches adopted a totally different message. It's not a community church that's about changing the community and giving my life, including maybe even being murdered on behalf of my community to fight injustice. No, it's about your personal faith will make you rich. If you give, you'll be rich. But we know who always generally gets rich under these kinds of doctrines is that pastor. And so they adopted that partly in a response to what happened in the civil rights movement with civil rights preachers. Civil rights preachers died broke even though they gave their lives. These people said, I'm determined not to happen to me. And so now we have the most, at the time of the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, these churches, the most popular churches in the black community, were those churches who were preaching about doing something for the community. Today, the most popular churches in the black community are churches that talk about being rich as a person, your personal goal, being wealthy and successful. And it is partly a direct response to what happened to the civil rights preachers. The prosperity gospel is in diametric opposition to the social gospel that King
and even Malcolm X on the Islamic side were preaching.
I wish people would join me in thanking this wonderful panel. Start of the conversation.